Welcome everyone to the Let's Talk podcast. We're so happy to have you here today.
Some of you might be wondering why we are no longer here for it. So we changed our name to Let's Talk Post-Grad podcast. So that is our new name, what we'll be going by. So feel free to like, follow, subscribe, tell your friends, put it in your Instagram stories, all that jazz. Also on the list, a special shout out to Jessica Chow for making our music, our intro music, that good rhythm at the beginning. Jessica Chow, you are the one. All right, so yeah, we have Allie Ulsh here today, and she is a recent grad from Penn State as well. So would you guys just want to hop on into it?
Yeah, sure. Allie Ulsh is a all-around human being champion, and we're so excited to have her on the podcast today. I think she's going to share some gems with us. But Allie, yeah, so just icebreaker, like what are you drinking and why? What are you here for?
Okay. Hey everyone, my name is Allie Ulsh, and I'm really excited to be here today with Whit and Tess. I am drinking, this is going to make me sound so bougie, and I just bawled out at Wegmans for it. So this is not a true reflection of my life or spending habits, but I bought one of the Mount Nittany Vineyard bottles, even though it was way more expensive than that $6 wine.
Oh, that in the big section?
Yes, in the big section where it's like PA preferred. And I was like, ooh. And I'm drinking it in a wine glass that says, it's not really drinking alone if the dog is home, because I've turned into a 40-year-old mother with a dog baby.
That's so good. So on brand. Love it.
So good. Oh my gosh. I feel like it's so interesting to see how we've all transitioned since graduating. So I feel like you adopted a dog. We can start there. So you adopted a dog. Tell us about what that process was like, because I feel like it was really hard to adopt a dog.
So stressful.
And like what that is like now.
Yeah, so I adopted a dog when I was working out in Colorado, which I'm sure we'll get into that later. But I adopted him, one, because I always grew up with dogs, and I really was lacking the companionship because I was living by myself. And as Whitney kind of touched on in the last episode, was having a really difficult time making friends, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and also because there are no young people in this work environment. Like, where are you guys at?
Really, where are the young professionals?
Like, where are you? So I kept looking, and Whitney was kind of privy to the process. It was impossible to get I think a lot of people are also kind of feeling this loneliness and looking for companionship in the form of a dog. And so finally I found him, and his name was Zeppelin, and I got him at the Denver Animal Shelter. And he is a little 6-year-old Chihuahua Corgi, or Chorgi, or Chigi, whatever you prefer.
Oh my gosh.
He is the sweetest little thing ever. We're working on some separation anxiety, but he's awesome, and he's a really fun companion. And now we kind of have, now that I'm living with my partner, Zach, we kind of have like a little family with a little dog baby, and we're those people now.
Do you feel like you guys are like jointly taking care of this dog, and it's like, oh, like did you get the dog today? It's like a shared responsibility.
Yeah, I definitely do feel like it's a shared responsibility. And I mean, Zach is awesome, and he, not that I would say he goes above and beyond.
Yeah, keep him humble.
But you know, he does. I do feel like we are a partnership, and he just knows to do things without asking, which is like, ladies, is that really the bare minimum? But you know,
honestly, like I'm just trying to find somebody I don't need to manage.
Someone that will make.
But we all know we love a micromanage. Like, let's do a project.
I love the control, but also I want you to do it on your own. I don't want to manage, but like I want to control everything.
Wow. So Allie, why don't we talk about, so what has it been like with living with Zach? I mean, we obviously need to talk about Colorado, but kind of just moving with the segue. How has it been living with him and trying to navigate that? Because you guys were doing long distance and now you're living with each other. That's a really big difference to kind of go into.
Yeah. So Zach and I have kind of been, we're almost creatures of habit now, because so we did long distance for 6 months when I studied abroad on my junior spring semester. And while I was studying abroad, he literally called me when I was on the brink of death after drinking for like 18 hours in Costa Rica. We were on a spring break during study abroad. That wasn't my whole study abroad experience. But he called me and he was like, hey, I got a job in Harrisburg, which is my hometown in Pennsylvania. And he was like, are we moving in together? And I was like, yeah, I guess we are. So Zach moved in with me to the house that I inherited in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we lived together for 3 months. And I think that it was a critical experience, because I don't necessarily know if we would have been ready to move in with each other after working long distance for 6 months, because it is, as your podcast is hoping to like bring to light, like post-grad life is so different than undergraduate life. And so I'm really grateful that we did live together, because I think we really kind of learned each other's schedules and each other's routines and kind of the best way to manage conflict together, which is like, it's so different than managing conflict with like your brother, which you just like scream at each other and slam the door. Like you can't.
Right. You have to be to some level. Yeah. There, you can't go back. Once you argue, it's like, ooh, I understand that. That's
right. And it is also difficult. And I think maybe a few listeners will relate to this, is that it's really important to like break the cycle of like what you saw as a child with your own parents, and realizing that that is not a healthy way to be in a relationship and to be a partner, and to try to work through all of those feelings and then acknowledge them, and then be able to put that into life when you something like that, because you want to break the pattern and you want to be a better partner and you want to show up. So I think that's maybe my biggest issue with living with Zach, is trying to kind of reframe the way I think a healthy relationship should look like.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And we learn so much from the relationships that we grow up in and we see. And I feel like, living with Paul, I find myself being like a little bit reactive sometimes. And what did you say the other day? Like, you need to wash the demon off your face. It's just like when you go to the bathroom, just like splash the water and wash the demon away, because sometimes you just have to regroup and be like, okay, who do I want to be? What's the type of partner I want to be? What's the type of person I want to be? And like, would I want to date myself right now with how I'm acting? And if the answer is no, then like, reassess.
The answer is no. You lock yourself in the bathroom and flick the lights 3 times just and you turn it on again. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting thing. So how long has it's been like what, a week now that you and Zach have been there?
Yeah, so we just moved into a new place together, which is awesome, but that brings its whole other things, just like the sheer stress of moving, and then also trying to navigate, like, we are still in a relationship, and this is way different than any like other roommate relationship that we had, which is like tricky territory to navigate, because obviously like you need to feel completely comfortable in your own skin, but then it's also like you need to like hide a little bit, like you can't let like the full demon out, or like the full like troll out. Like there needs to be a little bit of magic and like a little bit of mystery, because then you're just living with a roommate, and that's like so unsexy.
No, when Paul and I first started living together, I was like, listen, we need to keep some level of like romance alive, because he was like peeing like with the door cracked, and I was like, I don't. Like, can we please step it up a level. Like, like, I love you. I'm here to support you. But like, I get the whole, like, you're trying to be comfortable and live in your space, but you're also still trying to be like, let's be romantic with each other and not just like a partnership that gets things done and is effective, because that's great, but also like you want some love.
Right. So I think that's been tricky this first, just because it's like, you're like, we have to move this table up the flight of stairs. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's like everything you're doing is a trust exercise at that point to see like if this person can carry their weight.
Literally, because I might drop this 100-pound table on your head. Like,
Oh my god.
How has it been like decorating and stuff and like your new apartment that's jointly shared in like both of your spaces?
it's been pretty good. I feel like we kind of had the same style a little bit. Like, it's kind of a little bit country.
That's so good.
I don't know, but I feel like that's been pretty easy. I know that can be really, really tricky for some.
Winnie, you wanna chime in? You wanna chime in with Paul's Dungeons and Dragons? I'm really exposing him over here.
I can. So for an example, like I'm at my desk right now, which I think is where I work all the time, and it's like beautifully set up for me. But then he like he puts this shit up here. I shouldn't say that. These things that he makes and he loves, and they're great. That are like, you know, like miniature dice, and like these mini like.
Wait, I saw those when I visited you, and I was like, is Whitney purposely putting these things on her desk?
It's decorating for you.
So it's a compromise though, because it's our space and it's not just my space, and I love him, and there's like things about him that are like a little bit different than what I pursue, but I have to love him for it because as a whole person, I think he's great. So I'm really happy to hear that you guys are decorating in acceptable, like in a way that works for both of you.
Yeah, it feels really right to be living together. I feel like, especially after we lived together for the one summer before our senior year of college, we both left that experience on a very good note, and I think that really helped propel our relationship in a way forward. Going to senior year and post-graduation, but I really wish that post-graduation this would have been the spot that we had been in right away, but I'm just grateful that we're here now, even though it was 6 months post what we thought it would be.
Yeah, why don't we talk about kind of then what you did after you graduated and how it's so different from where you are now, and it's just a matter of what, a couple weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about Colorado and kind of what took you there?
Yeah. So post-graduation, I was in, well, even I guess maybe a couple months before graduation, I was in the same spot as many of my peers, and especially like friends that were in the same major and within the same field. Everyone was really struggling, especially I have a degree in environmental resource management, and a lot of environmental focused positions are funded, which was really difficult when COVID hit because those are already kind of really highly sought, really unfortunately underpaid positions that aren't necessarily deemed quote unquote essential. So I was in a position where I felt like you just have to get a job, you'll be fine, because if you don't have a job post-graduation, I don't know, like I felt like my life literally was like the little thread on the sweater and you pull it and then it would all go away. I don't, looking back,
analogy.
necessarily think that would have actually happened. Like I think I would have been semi-okay if I didn't have a job post-graduation, but I accepted a position as working within civil engineering and design, which was not my major, but so I was really excited to start it because it was also working with farmers and ranchers in rural Colorado, which I thought was really interesting, and it would
Yeehaw!
yeehaw! I thought it would teach me a little bit different about agriculture than what I had been used to working with in Pennsylvania. And so I moved out there to Colorado to do that.
Right. Yeah, and agriculture looks so different everywhere. And do you want to kind of, share a story that you think maybe we can talk about your job, but like I'm just curious, like what is one story from your time in the wild, wild west that kind of sums up the experience and how it was for you? Do you have any of those? I mean, I may be putting you on the spot, but I mean, I know a couple that I think are really funny that you've told me. So
I think maybe, okay, I'll share this one because it's more about myself and my own. So I was driving out to a ranch to go check on a stock water tank, which is basically an area where the cows all congregate to drink water. And that's super important in rural Colorado because there isn't any water.
Yeah.
All of these ranches have, those kind of typical barbed wire fences that you would see even if you don't know anything about agriculture, you can kind of picture what that looks like in your head. There's like a tumbleweed.
The fact that it's literally tumbleweeds, like, is just too much.
Sidebar, first day I was there, a tumbleweed blew so hard into our windshield. Zach and I both screamed. We thought we hit something and it was just a tumbleweed. The wind is also blowing like 90 miles an hour and you're like, hang on. But okay, back to, we're at the ranch and these fence posts are so tight. Like they have like little loops over the fence posts. So I'm yanking on it, and all of a sudden I hear this, and I was like, oh my God, there's a rattlesnake over there. Didn't realize that would be like an everyday occurrence at the time because it was my first week at the job. So I'm just like, oh shit. So I walk away and it kind of goes away and then I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
Then I get in, I go to get out. And you always shut the fence behind you. And then, because you don't want the cows to get out just in case. Mm-hmm. Put the fence post back on. And all of a sudden, the fence rips and snags on my t-shirt. And I was like, whoa! I get yanked with the fence post to the ground. I'm like, okay, fine. It is hooked on, thankfully it didn't hit me. It's hooked on my clothes so badly that I can't get it off or get the fence post back on.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm sitting out there for like an hour. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm like, I don't know what to do. No one at work is worried where I am. No one's just like 3 hours at this point. Finally, I'm like, I have to like take my shirt off. Get out. I take my shirt off. The second I do, who comes driving up but farmer so-and-so? And I'm just sitting there in my sports bra and my jeans and boots. I'm like, hi.
Oh my God.
So I love that one. And then I ended up ripping the shirt anyway because I was in like such a rush to get dressed.
Yeah. Right. As one does when their shirt gets yanked off their body.
Yeah. Another one, and maybe this one will dive us into a different topic, but this was my first project by myself and I was inspecting construction. So just making sure that everything was okay. And I get back in the truck, which is like a honking pickup truck. You literally will not be able to, you got a 4-wheel on these places. As I'm driving away, I look out my back mirror. I see one of the construction workers, not walking, not sprinting after. And I'm like, oh shit, I hit something. I hit someone. Something's wrong. I put it in reverse. I get out of the car. I'm like, is everything okay? He goes, I just wanted to tell you that you are so beautiful. Crickets. Like, what do we even say to that? And like,
literally.
But then it was like the whole array of emotions because I was like, this is hilarious. Mm-hmm. Like, am I safe? 3, do I share this with my employers who are all 65 plus, like white cis males,
Right.
if I share that with them, will they let me go back out to construction sites, or will they think that I'm not?
So annoying that you have to question your job because of something that someone said about your appearance because you're a woman.
Yeah, so I only share that story with like you guys because like it is so funny and like just
that's honestly gold, Allie. Like keep that story close to your heart.
like sprinting after a truck.
Like sprinting. Like that's like what really gets me. I can only imagine like seeing somebody being like, okay, first week, like I did so good on that site, everything worked out, and like just seeing like this man sprint, I would be like,
like, what's running through his head? Like, I gotta say to this darling that she's a beauty.
I literally, I don't know, but like, it gets funnier and funnier the more I think about it. But when I was driving back, I was actually concerned, and I didn't end up saying anything to my coworkers because I thought that it just might impair my ability, or in their mind, perform my everyday work duties and then have me stuck in the office, which I don't prefer to field work.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like we talked about like where are the young people in, like where are the young professionals, but I also am curious, like how was it to one, be like the only woman in your office, and also like one of the only young people in your office, and like how did you adapt to that? Because honestly, the other thing that I feel like is really apparent from these stories is that like rural Colorado is not like urban or even suburban or rural Pennsylvania, totally different landscapes. So like that's so much to adapt to as like a recent grad going to a new place that is culturally so different from where you grew up, which is okay, but like how did you adapt to that? That's so many questions. Work setting, Colorado setting, what was that like for you?
Definitely. I think it was a huge culture shock in a way that I wasn't expecting, and in a way that I don't necessarily think was a good thing and does not reflect kindly on the culture that is there in comparison to kind of the urban university setting that we were in at Penn State. And so it was really difficult to adapt first, especially because even though I was working for the federal government, when I arrived, which was the first week of May, so like think back to the pandemic during then, no one was wearing a mask, and no one continued to wear a mask, and people continued to.
Right.
You kind of know where I'm going with that.
Don't even have to say it.
Yeah. So that was just like a complete shock in itself, because in Pennsylvania, the culture was so like, let's look out for one another. Like, let's wear a mask. Like we are in this together kind of feeling. And then going to that where people didn't even necessarily believe in the concept of a mask in the workspace was really difficult, especially when I continued to wear a mask. Set me up for situations that I'm glad that I had like the tactfulness to handle, but I don't, like, there were moments when I could literally see myself just like rage quitting, not because of COVID-19 protocol, but also just because of, I don't necessarily think it was a workspace conducive to young workers or particularly young women. I cannot even imagine the experience of a BIPOC individual workspace, because consistently, not only did I face gender discrimination in the workspace, but there was blatant discrimination, and it was really difficult to say something.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was, I don't really ever know if I fully was accepted or would have ever been accepted in that workspace, but just kind of putting your nose to the grindstone and getting the work done that you need to do, and kind of swallowing the pill that, you know what, maybe you won't ever be friends with these coworkers, and maybe that's for the better. And just trying to like adapt in the best way that I can, and interjecting when you hear something really inappropriate and speaking to your supervisor when you feel necessary. But it's also a really difficult and something that no one had ever said or even mentioned. Like, what if your supervisor acts the same way as your coworkers?
Yeah, that's one thing.
How do you navigate that situation, especially as a young woman who is in an entry-level position, like
in the middle of COVID when you really need a job?
Right. So I feel like I did the best I could in that position, just through really focusing on the work, which I think is really important. Like, just important for professionals. Just do the work and accept that you might not be as fulfilled as some of like your club work that you did in in college.
Yeah.
Just accepting that you're kind of a cog in the system. And
Yeah, and Whitney and I talked about that like in our last podcast about how you have to accept that you're at the bottom of the totem pole, but it's not easy. Like, it doesn't mean that it's easy to accept it. And then on top of that, like, you have to accept that, and then all of this discrimination and these feelings, these hard feelings that you're going through in the workplace, and that you can't necessarily act on because, if you do, you're seen as an emotional young woman. And like, that's just it's not fair.
Yeah. And especially the way it is like such a fear tactic almost, but not even, I don't even think they quite realized what they were doing, but they would speak amongst themselves and say things about other women. That be women in their personal lives, women, political figures, women in other offices within the same branch. And you'd hear what they say about them. And you can't help but internalize and think, what do they think about me? And then nothing slams the door like that, because you're already closing off a conversation that hasn't even been had. And now I don't even necessarily feel safe facilitating.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard to like interject and even offer your opinion, whether it be controversial or not, when you hear conversation happening about how negative or how frustrated they are with this other woman figure. And so I guess one of my questions for you, and I think you might have already touched on it, but I want to know if you have any like other opinions about it, because I think when we talk about like workplace justice and diversity, inclusion, equity, etc., we, at least for me, I have always been under the perception that if I bring it to my supervisor and if I go through the right channels and if I go to HR, then these things will be mitigated and I will feel protected. And that's probably a privilege that I've had my entire life, to feel that way. And so I'm curious, like, what is your kind of, it sounds like that was your experience, and I'm curious, like, if you have any advice for post-grads or people in general that are in this space right now that are like, I'm not supported. Like, everyone told me in all my diversity trainings to just go through the right channels and everything would be fine, but that's not it.
The biggest thing that I feel like I can say, because I've heard it from other female supervisors, and not even supervisors, but female colleagues within the office that I was working in, within the branch of office that I was working in, and they said, write it down, document every single thing, get the date, get who said it, get what happened, on as many details as you can immediately after the incident happened. It doesn't matter if it's just a conversation you heard, or if it's something, hopefully not, but if it's something that actually happened to you, or if happened to another colleague who felt safe enough to share it with you, write it down. Because even if you follow that protocol without that because they're going to turn right back around and say, where's your proof?
Right.
Where's your proof as a young woman?
Wow.
Because unfortunately, particularly within the federal government, it is a chain of men with the top. So behavior had been pardoned in the past, and behavior unfortunately will be pardoned again. So
Mhm.
is the best advice that I can give
Yeah, I think that's
women, and I don't think it's right,
No.
but it's just another way to protect yourself by keeping meticulous records.
yeah, and I'm so sorry that that is an experience that you like had to go through, and I think that you weren't able to travel to see the culture where you are, and even when you are able to travel to see what a job is like or what an area is like, it's not like you're having those conversations with your office mates or your coworkers, and that can create a lot of challenges for kind of taking a leap post grad and saying, oh yeah, this, why would you think that that is going to be any drastically different from what you've already experienced, because you've already been in roles that are kind of like that, and you've already understood that, like, as a woman it can be challenging, but you didn't expect that. And so as a post grad, it's like, oh yeah, like I can handle that, no problem. But it's like a totally different cultural setting, so we appreciate you kind of sharing that.
Yeah, and just as some comedic relief, I feel like the term young woman, Whitney Cummings talks about this in her podcast. Like, why does young have to be in front of woman? Why can't you just say woman? Because I don't need to know, like, if she's fertile or whatever. Like, there's no reason for there to even be a phrase young woman. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like it just makes it harder then for you to, like, kind of even more, that thus more harder to prove yourself as a woman because you have young in front of it, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I'm actually really glad that you said that, because I think just learning about the actual language that you might hear in the workspace, which completely is different from academia.
Mm-hmm.
People present themselves, they present their pronouns, they're very people forward. And I think that is appropriate. And I think that's especially important in a workplace setting where you don't know anything about these people. Whereas you might have had a class with someone, so you kind of can pick up on some like contextual clues about how they present themselves and how they wish to be seen in the world. But in the workplaces, particularly in the workplace, like no one ever told me that I would be referred to as chick or girl or oh, that female over there.
No.
Yes. And just like the kind of language that is the reality in the workspace still to this day in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Just how, like, really take a moment to reflect on how demeaning that is when you are being presented to a contractor and they say, oh yeah, here's the new chick. Like,
Right.
I'm sorry. What?
You're like, I'm not laying eggs over here. Like, I have a career. I am here to do the work. And this guy's just introducing me. He doesn't even need to be here. Get out of the way.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like, hi, I'm Allie. I'm the civil engineer technician here to help you with my training and skills.
Oh,
Nice
yeah.
to meet
Exactly. No, but so I completely agree, Tess. And I even got pushback for putting my preferred pronouns, which are she, her, in my email. What is the little the end thing of the email? I don't even know.
Yeah, the signature, whatever.
Yeah, the signature. I'm clearly not a young professional yet. But, and it's just things like that because I was in the academia bubble and in a more liberal leaning, I grew up in a more liberal leaning county. I never realized that you hear it, but you don't actually think that isn't the universal rhetoric yet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. So how does it feel? So you left Colorado and you said, bye, I'm done. So what was,
Pedal to the metal, baby. I'm not even looking at the tumbleweed in my rear.
We're plowing through.
so like, first of all, like huge, like congratulations to you, I think, for pivoting and for taking charge of your life and like leading what you want to do. But what has that been like? And I know you, like, what are some of the things that you're nervous about with it or feeling with it? Because it is, huge change. And we're only like, what, 5 months out from graduation and you've been through like these massive changes. So what was that like?
Yeah, I feel like you've been through a lifetime of changes already.
I feel like I have too. It was such a difficult decision to decide to apply to other jobs, because I feel like you always hear the conversations about how our generation is more quick to leave a job that they don't like, and maybe that's not a good thing. Like maybe you need to stick it out and you need to have grit. First of all, I think I already have grit and I already am a resilient human based on previous experiences in my lifetime.
Yeah. You are.
And so
Oh my God, yeah, let me say yeah too. Like I feel like you need a lot of validation because yes.
Thank you. Yep. Quick backstory for the listeners. My mom passed away when I was a sophomore in college, and so I was her primary caretaker from the time she was diagnosed in high school till the time she passed away. And I've been kind of raising my younger brother, who's not so young anymore. He's also at Penn State, but so just from all those experiences, it was really difficult. Like I felt like I didn't have the self-validation that I actually knew that I wasn't just quitting because it was hard and that I needed to quit for my own mental health and well-being, and that I knew that there would be a workspace that actually valued women and valued the skills that I had to bring to the table. And so, but it took a lot of time to get to that point, and a lot of discussions with you guys and a lot of discussions with other older professionals to validate that that was the right move. And so I end up finding a new job, and I'll be working kind of close to where I went to school, which will be really cool because I already kind of have some relationships in agriculture established here. But it was just really hard to be brave and say, yeah, you know what, I need to quit and I can't do this anymore, especially being someone who just is like, I can't quit.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to feel like a quitter, you know?
Yeah. And I think quitter has been like such a negative term that we've all kind of like been told is a bad thing. But I think in this situation and in a lot of situations, quitting means that you're taking charge of your life and what you deserve. And like you said, you've been through challenge and you've developed grit. And for anybody to look at that and say, you were just quitting because you couldn't put up with it. You could have, and you can, but you don't need to. And that's like more important at the end of the day. Why would you stay if you don't need to?
Yeah, and I was just gonna say too, like sometimes, this is just a common thing. I feel that to be vulnerable is even so much more brave than to just not. And I feel like you had to be vulnerable. You had to say, okay, like I moved all the way across the country, time to go back. Not even in a season. So I feel like that's a lot. That takes a lot of grit to do that and a lot of bravery. So good job, Allie.
Thank you. You guys are so validating.
This is why we have this podcast. Yeah. Let's talk.
But yeah, that was the biggest thing. But once I don't think I quite realized like how stuck and how unfulfilled like I was feeling until I got the job accepted offer. And it just felt like I can't even describe, it was euphoric. Like I just finally felt like the first time since graduation that I had made a right decision.
Wow,
that like hit me. I have goosebumps.
I know.
And it's like so hard, but then it's like I felt that now, because before I felt like not that I was making wrong decisions, but they just weren't quite sitting right with me and what I was doing. And so to finally feel like that gut feeling, which I think is so important in everybody, but to feel that way and to have your own self-validation for once and be like, this is the right move for me.
Oh yeah.
With what I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes your instinct is the best thing you can follow and things like that. That sounds really cheesy, but.
Get me with the quotes, Tess.
Yeah, like normally I'm bad at quotes. Like, what is it? She wants her cake, but she ate it. What is it? She wants her cake and eat it too. I'll cut this out later.
Somewhere like that.
Yeah, I think that I think that's really valuable for other people to hear as well. And I mean, that's even valuable for me. Just, I feel like you touched on a lot, from like kind of accepting the work that you're doing and doing the best that you can at it, and realizing that you're just a cog in the machine, but it's towards something you care about. So at the end of the day, that's okay. And just, yeah, I'm really happy for you that this feels like a better choice, and that you can feel that in your gut that that's a right decision for you, because that's so hard.
Right. And just kind of, you know, because we Zoom with you every week, every other week, and just kind of looking at you now, since you're settled and calm, I feel like I can just tell that you are so much calmer and so much more at peace. And I feel like that's very healthy. And I know that, you know, some nights you'd be FaceTiming us on the floor, so defeated after a long day of, you know, being chased by some creeper calling you beautiful. So I am happy for you, and that you kind of found your fit. And that's the beauty of post-grad. You can move around and do what you need to do for yourself.
Yeah, and that is the one thing that is, like, even though I was providing some very funny stories of, even though it's like, were they funny or were they actually traumatic? But
no, that's sometimes, you know, Whitney and I actually saw a psychic recently, and the psychic told Whitney that she uses humor to deal with like traumatizing things. And
oh my God.
I mean, like, what's a funny story? Like, if we say it's a funny story and not a traumatizing story, like, people can laugh with us, and then we don't feel like it's as bad.
Right. I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad in the office today. Like,
But like, you want to know a funny story? Like, this horrible thing was said, but like, I said it was funny, so like, we can laugh about it.
right, let's just all trauma bond. It's so healthy.
exactly.
Oh my God. Ali, another question that we like to ask, I act like we've done this a million times, but another question we like to ask is 2 words that you feel describe your post-grad experience. And, you know, just anything that you feel like represents the last 5 months of your life, post-grad.
Yeah, you can sit with it. I did.
Yeah.
I need to sit with it for a second. I would say one would be metamorphic. I think that it has been definitely, I've had to fill so many roles outside of the capacity that I had been before, both professional but also emotional.
Right.
And I especially think with all of the political and cultural events that we are experiencing right now with COVID-19, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the upcoming election, I think this has been just a true time of learning and reflection, and just trying, like, it is our responsibility to make ourselves, to be a better citizen.
I would love that. Mental software updates.
Yeah, like literal, a mental software update. I love that, Tess.
I feel like I stole it from a podcast.
Well, shout out to that podcast who said that. But yeah, I just feel like I am such a different person, both in a professional space, but also just in a personal space, because I'm trying to absorb what I'm learning and put it into work. And the work's hard, but I think metamorphic is the best way to describe it. And second word, honestly, it's been kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
Like let's just yeet out to Colorado for 26 hours, and then work life is literally just defeating. Roger, that's my
perfect timing, Roger. Perfect timing.
Get over here. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, it fit perfectly.
But yeah, so it would like the work life defeating, and then just trying to exist as a human right now, and being like, yep, you know what, this is for me. Let's drive another 26 hours and then get a flat tire. Like, you know, just
get a flat tire.
Yes, but you know, that's just what life is. And like, has there ever been a time where my life like isn't actually chaotic? I don't know. So
fair question.
So I would think that, but one other thing, which you guys kind of talked about in your 2 words, like when you said that you were kind of a little bit bored with post-grad life, like I almost feel like kind of peaceful. Like I get home from work and I can just have a glass of wine and read a book.
Oh yeah.
Cuddle with Roger.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
But like, it is so different than what my undergrad life looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, does that make me sound old? Like I'm kind of like relishing like the sitting on the couch time.
Oh my God, that is not old at all. You're just enjoying yourself. I feel like we have to, like, now that we've graduated, I feel like we have to relearn who we are because we put ourselves on hold because we're like, well, I have 4 exams this week and 5 papers. So obviously myself is not an option.
Right. It's like you're like a separate entity. You're like a schoolwork. And I definitely feel like I would say that has maybe been one of the hardest parts of post-grad life, like outside of professional, like personal life, is finding my identity outside of student, especially because I definitely, now that I have the time to reflect on it, I feel like I really poured myself into my identity as a student, especially when my mom was diagnosed with cancer, because I was like, this is the one thing that I can control. It's like, I can get an A on this math test. Like, I can show up for classes. And then, especially when this is going to make me sound horrible, but I'm sure other people can relate to this. I took a test the next day after she died. I took a test the next day.
Right.
What else was there to do but show up to class?
Wow.
Oh my gosh, Allie.
Kind of control, like using schoolwork as a controller, but also as like an identity. Like, oh, I'm a student. Oh, I'm this major. Oh, I get amazing grades. That sort of thing. And then like you graduate and you're like, well, what can I control now? And like, that's not healthy, and that's not a healthy coping mechanism. This got darker than I intended it to be.
No.
It's like who am I now? Like,
Yeah.
am I just someone who
No, and I think
have to work?
Whitney and I appreciate you being so candid about it because I think it's important to know that like Penn State in general is a bubble, a huge bubble. And I feel like now that all these things have happened to you and that you've gone through this and that you finally feel like you're, like you said, euphoric and in a space that you find peaceful, it's a shock. It's kind of like a culture shock. You're like, what's happening? I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, like especially the first month after graduation, I was like expecting little like emails like, oh, you forgot to submit an assignment. Like that's not healthy. Like just relax. Just watch TV or something.
Yeah, Allie, I also really appreciate your comment about that. That was something that you could control in a time that you couldn't control a lot of other things. And I think that is something that I identify with as well. Maybe not, not for the same reasons and not to the same severity, but like that is something that I really felt I could control. And I think it developed this like workaholic mentality where it was associated with like my self-identity and still kind of is as a post-grad. And I think that's something I've been grappling with a lot. Just that was me, like that was what I can control. And I really appreciate that you said that. And I think a lot of other people might relate to that as well. And it's definitely a lot to take in and to be like, I'm not a student anymore. So what am I?
Yeah, I definitely. And but even if you're a student listening to this and you're like scared about what post-grad life will be, it's just like, just know that like you exist outside of your classes, and it's like you exist outside of your workspace too.
Mm-hmm.
You show up to work as unhealthy as it is, like you want to be in a workspace where you can like, it's your passion and like you really connect with your coworkers and you're all on the same level.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you exist outside of your workspace, and hopefully you're in a safe enough workspace that you don't feel you feel safe to work in, because that's a whole nother conversation. But
Right.
at the end of the day, you come home and you can leave your work behind you.
Yeah.
What is the saying? You shouldn't work to live. You shouldn't live to work. You should work to work. Oh my God, I need to just stop saying sayings. Is the reality.
Tess is reading the quotes on the wall right now.
Top of my phone, so like,
like inspirational quotes.
It's like, gotta put these in the podcast. Quotedaily.com.
I'm just trying to give some little tidbits of community relief.
Oh my gosh.
Definitely though. Like it is important, like it's not healthy to pour your identity into one thing, and
Right. Don't wear all the hats.
you don't have to wear all the hats, and you know, you can just wear the fun party hat sometimes.
Love that.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you feel like you want to share with people in the post-grad space? Because, wow, your life has been a roller coaster, and I feel like, you know, you're keeping a level head and you're trying to move forward the best that you can. And I think you're doing pretty well. Do you have anything else that you're like, this is something that you wanted to touch on or say about post-grad life, or any advice?
As it's so difficult to like say it, but especially, and like as a listener, like you might be like, I don't want to do this, but it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to not know, and like you will be scared. Like I'm scared right now. Like maybe I'm making the wrong decisions. Like maybe I shouldn't have just signed a lease with my partner, and like maybe I shouldn't have accepted this job. Like maybe I shouldn't have quit the security in my past job. Like those are all unanswered questions, and I don't have the answer to them, but I have faith in myself that I'm making the right decisions. And I think that it's just really important that you have faith in yourself, because that's all you got. And I think that would be my last thing to say.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Allie, for talking with us today. You're such an incredible, insightful, resilient, et cetera, human. We love you so much.
Yeah, Allie, thank you so much for coming on and really like being candid and sharing your thoughts and your opinions with everybody, because I know that you've touched on so much, and I'm so impressed by who you are and thankful to have you in my life, and like I have faith in you, and I think that's honestly lovely.
If Whitney has faith in you, that's all that matters.
If Whitney has faith, I'm set. Like I don't know why I'm scared anymore. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your openness and your willingness to have me on the podcast, and hopefully this resonates with at least someone.
I think it will. It resonated with me.
Thanks, Wood. That's all that matters then. Sorry, listeners.
Okay. I think that's it.
Yeah, well, that concludes another episode of Let's Talk with Tess and Whitney. So we have changed our name, so please, tell your friends, tell anyone, get the name out there, because we have changed it. We post videos every Monday, so subscribe, like, follow. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify. What else am I missing, Whitney?
YouTube, Spotify. Next week we are going to interview a post-grad that is 3 years out of graduation life. And I think he will have a totally different take on this than any of the three of us have. So it's my brother, but I'm excited.
Surprise!
We can take that part out. I like literally talked about him before I said it was my brother. But I'm excited. I think he's gonna have some things to share that we haven't touched on yet. So I'm excited to talk with him and have you all listen to it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Join us next week.
Yep. Thanks, Allie. Thanks, Whitney. All right. Bye, guys.
That's a wrap.